Hi and welcome to Terry Talks Movies. This time around I'm doing a video about one specific actor. He made any number of very cool action films, and yet not enough people know about him. Mostly because he isn't an English language movie guy. He is Japanese, and his birth name was Sadao Maeda, but people know him best as Sonny Chiba, or in Japanese, Chiba Shinichi. Sonny Chiba is the coolest action guy of the 1970s. Forget your Charles Bronsons, forget all those other guys. Sonny Chiba is the guy. He is the GOAT. And so for this video, I thought I would go through some of the action films of Sonny Chiba from the 1970s, which was his heyday, even though he worked a long time before that, long time after that. The 1970s were the best of Sonny Chiba. The reason I'm doing that, apart from anything else, is I was given a couple of the movies by a good friend of the channel, Damien, who doubled up and bought 2 copies of the Blu-rays and gave me one. So Sonny Chiba started working in the early 1960s on Japanese television, and for most of his career, he worked for Toei Studios, which was the kind of second-tier movie studio. Toho was at the top, Toei was just a little bit down, and Toei, like Toho, really leaned into the tokusatsu movies, the science fiction stuff, the monsters, the giant monsters, all of that kind of gear. It made all sorts of other movies, as indeed did Toho. But if you want to see Sonny Chiba in the early films, you might try to track down a copy of this, which is out of print, and I spent a lot of money on it. It's a Toei Classic Tokusatsu Collection, which is a collection of 6 films and a TV series, which include Invasion of the Neptune Men, which starred Sonny Chiba. It also has Golden Bat in it, which is another Sonny Chiba movie, and a movie that is kind of rare called Terror Beneath the Sea, which also stars Sonny Chiba, and is the only Sonny Chiba movie I can find where he has a Caucasian girlfriend. So Chiba started out in the early 1960s, but in the early 1970s is where he really hit his stride, because he started making martial arts films. Before that, he made certain adventure films. He made movies where he was a romantic lead, and yeah, good-looking rooster. So he was definitely right for that. In the 1970s, even though he had studied martial arts for a while, he hadn't really made a martial arts movie. Then in 1973, Toei gave him a martial arts movie based on a manga made by a guy called Iki Kajiwara, who was a rough guy. He was a friend of gangsters. He knew his way around the Japanese underworld, and he made a manga called Bodyguard Kiba, which was very grounded and very realistic in its depiction of Japanese crime syndicates and things like that. And in 1973, Sonny Chiba made The Bodyguard. And in Bodyguard Kiba, which is also known as Karate Kiba, he plays a martial artist called Naoto Kiba, who is a bodyguard. You see him at the start of the film where he foils an aeroplane hijacking, which is such a 1970s thing, by basically taking out the gunman on the plane. He then does a press conference saying, yes, I'm for hire. I'm a bodyguard. I'm very good at what I do. Here's the karate school that I represent. I want a job. He gets a job with a woman who's very wealthy, and she wants him to look after her and bodyguard her for 4 days. What Kiba doesn't know is doing a big drug deal, and that's the reason why she needs his protection for 4 days. She's the ex-girlfriend of a New York mafia don, and she's also involved in what's called in the movie the Yellow Mafia, which is the Japanese version of the mafia, who are particularly nasty. As a side issue, Kiba also has a sister who's a martial artist who gets more to do in the second movie. There's so much to love in this film. For a start, the director is a guy called Ryuki Takamori, who does some really interesting stuff in the movie, particularly during the fight scenes. There's a lot of blood and guts in this. There's some very gratuitous nudity. But when the fight scenes come up, Takamori frames the fight scenes, which all take place outdoors, in and around all sorts of brutalist architecture, great big concrete parking structures and other urban edifices, so that the characters very often are framed in between the pillars of things. He uses Dutch angles a lot in a way to put his characters firmly into an urban landscape. So it's almost like you as the audience are peeking at what's going on in the fight scenes. And it gives it a real sense of place. And of course it's cheap to do that. You just get a parking garage, or you get somewhere out near a warehouse, shipping containers are being stored, and you use that as your fight scene landscapes. And it works. It works incredibly and interestingly well. And Chiba's interesting playing Kiba. Chiba, you know what I mean. He's not as full on as he is in later action films. His character is kind of stoic, and he does a demonstration at the press conference where he gets somebody to give him a bottle of Coke, one of those old school thick bottles of Coke, and he karate chops the top of it off, which is kind of hard to do, but it's done in a way to just show his power as a karate guy. And I kind of like it when movies do odd things like that, using something very ordinary and then using it in an unexpected but very, very cool way. But the thing I love most about this, apart from Sonny Chiba himself, who's charismatic as hell, and his facial expressions just sell what his character is thinking every single moment of the movie. The thing that I love most about it is the way that Fujiwara frames the action sequences and lays them out. The fight choreography isn't always as good as I'd like, because this is still the 1970s. It's not as complex and elaborate and detailed as the fight sequences are in later martial arts films, or for that matter in Kurosawa movies, where they've got a lot more time to work things out. This wasn't something that was done on an enormously large budget. It's very much a kind of medium budget Japanese action film. The Bodyguard does have an American version where there is a little bit of extra footage in it. Haven't watched the American version. I tend to always go for the original version where I can on these things. But the American version is in the box set that Damien sent me, which also has the second one of these movies. And don't you love that artwork? This is the Eureka release of this. There's the inside cover, which is kind of cool. And it does, I believe, have a reversible cover with the original Japanese stuff on it. I always love Japanese posters from this particular time. And this does have the second movie, which in English is called Deadly Triangle Jump. And this one starts out really, really, really dark. It starts out with a fight between Kiba and a rival karate school, which takes place during a typhoon and a thunderstorm out in the country somewhere, even though it's probably filmed on a set. It's at night time, there's lightning and thunder and rain and everything like that, and Kiba's going up against these martial artists, and his sister is there too, trying to stop him because he's defending the martial arts school. A little bit like some Bruce Lee movies where the kung fu schools go up against each other. And in this one, at the start, his sister gets blinded by a rival martial artist, and Kiba goes nuts on them, of course, because he loves his sister. The blinding turns out to be temporary, and she does get a number of operations to fix it. But Kiba kills a man and goes to jail for a few years. And it's there that he meets another martial artist. Kiba gets out of jail and goes to a hostess bar, and the hostess bar people try to rip him off. He meets an attractive singer there who helps him out. And then he goes to work for a rival gang who do have some association with the people around the bar. He needs the money for his sister's operation. He needs to make sure that everything's going right there. And he basically needs a gig. So he starts working for this mob, not knowing that they have a deal where they're smuggling drugs. Again, it's another drug one. They're smuggling drugs into Japan through American military bases. So you get lots of scenes set in kind of sleazy little nightclubs around Tokyo. They're not real ones. They're basically there to... Sorry, I'm looking out the window. Luna's up on the fence, sniffing at something. They're not real bars, but they're set up kind of fun. And again, this is the 1970s. This is the era of Japan and Japanese cultures that are really groove on, the Showa era. And so you've got drug-addicted jazz drummers in there. You've got beautiful hostesses. You've got a beautiful singer who is actually Okinawan and has an association with the guy that Kiba meets in jail, who's her lover from when they were living in Okinawa. And towards the end, as everything goes west, and there's a complicated love triangle between Kiba, the other guy, and the singer and the other guy start using what's called a kama, which is a kind of Okinawan scythe, which is a martial arts weapon. Lots of fight scenes. Most of these take place outdoors. And again, the director uses the landscapes really interestingly to frame the characters. There's one group of fights which take place right near the runways at Haneda Airport in Tokyo, which are really good because while you've got all the action going on, you've also got jets roaring past in the background. So the director uses what's naturally in the landscape to enhance the action of the film. And I find all that really, really groovy. So these were the first martial arts films that Sonny Chiba did. And they hit with an audience. They were gory, they were action-packed, they were dramatic, they were very much like the manga. They were kind of full-on martial arts films. And one of them, of course, got the sale in America, which always helps things. And then we get to the movie series that really landed Sonny Chiba as a star in America, where the movie was released by New Line Cinema in America. And that's where Shinichi Chiba became Sonny Chiba, because they gave him an anglicized name for the movie. And that, of course, is the Street Fighter movies, where Sonny Chiba plays a martial artist and mad dog character called Terry Tsurugi, who is a feral and amoral martial artist who goes up against rival gangs. And these ones are particularly brutal. There's some of the artwork from the three movies, The Street Fighter, Return of the Street Fighter, and The Street Fighter's Last Revenge. And Tsurugi is just totally a monster in a lot of ways. And the quality of these films is higher than for the Bodyguard series. There's a lot more elaborate sets. The direction is a lot sharper. The cast of characters is really interesting. And you get some really great faces in these movies as well. Tsurugi is basically a mercenary. You hire him, he will take out anybody you want to get taken out. He will beat them up. He's not a bodyguard as much as he is a blunt instrument for your revenge on anything you want revenged on. Full-on 1970s blood and guts, nudity, Japanese nightclubs, totally over-the-top action. And at the time it came out, people were used to the precise and almost surgical martial arts films of people like Bruce Lee. They weren't ready for somebody who acts like a human sledgehammer in the way that Sonny Chiba does in the Street Fighter movies. These ones are grindhouse masterpieces. Tarantino's a big fan of the Street Fighter movies. In fact, he added it as a background piece in True Romance, the movie he wrote but didn't direct. But you need to get yourself a copy of the Street Fighter collection. Also, there is a kind of sequel series to it as well, where Sonny Chiba turns up in the first of the movies in the sister Street Fighter series. It stars a woman called Etsuko Shihomi as Sister Street Fighter, basically a female version of Tsurugi. And in the first one, Sister Street Fighter, Sonny Chiba turns up. In the second one of the movies, Sister Street Fighter hanging on a thread. And then also there's Return of the Sister Street Fighter and Sister Street Fighter 5th Level Fist. So there are more movies in the Sister Street Fighter series than there are in the Street Fighter series. But these ones you've got to check out, they're mad. The Sister Street Fighter ones are by Arrow, and the Street Fighter collection is by Shout Factory. As a fan of these kind of movies, and as a fan of this era of movie making, I highly recommend them. The other Sonny Chiba movie from his martial arts era is from 1975, and it's weird. It's deeply and weird and strange. It's based on a manga, as indeed were many of the action films that Japan produced at the time. And it's a thing called Wolf Guy, where Sonny Chiba plays a werewolf assassin. I'm not kidding you. Werewolf assassin. And it is over-the-top crazy. It's less predictable than any of the other films. You kind of go, what is going on in this movie? The movie's called Wolf Guy, of course, and there's the alternative artwork on there. There are a lot of extras on these ones which are really useful, because even with action films from a non-English speaking culture, and Japan at the time was kind of weird and wild with its cinema, getting somebody to give you a lot of context and a lot of background and a lot of extra information is quite useful for this kind of film. Doesn't mean you can't go in blind and just watch it and enjoy it, but it does mean you'll get a much richer experience if you do check out the extras on these discs. There's something deeply special about this era of Japanese action films, and there's something deeply special about Sonny Chiba, which is why Tarantino put Sonny Chiba into the Kill Bill movies as Hattori Hanzo, the guy who makes the bride her sword. And even though it is kind of a wily comic character, it is still a way of honouring the legacy of Sonny Chiba. Unfortunately, during the recent unpleasantness, Sonny Chiba died of the small C, the Delta variant. And we lost a lot of good, solid, older actors to that. And I was looking up a list of it, and people like Cloris Leachman died of it. And David Prowse, who played Darth Vader, died of it. And Sonny Chiba died of it. A whole bunch of different people that we know and love their work were mown down by this particular disease, when they still might have had a few movies left in them in some cases. Not always, but some. I just thought I'd do a quick video just extolling the virtues and recommending Sonny Chiba as somebody whose movies you want to check out. They do show up on streaming services. I think Tubi may have several of them, so you may be able to avail yourself of the movies through that. But if you're in the mood for just pure action, over-the-top madness, and if, like me, you enjoyed this Showa era of Japan, and you like seeing the landscapes and the cityscapes and what people were wearing, what people were doing, how they were doing it, it's really interesting. For instance, in the first of the Bodyguard movies, there's a digital clock with little kind of flip-over numbers in it, which is an important moment in the movie as Kiba is rolling down the last few minutes of being the bodyguard of this lady. And that clock looks marvelous. I want that clock. And just those little bits of business and little bits of things in the movies, it makes them a little more interesting if you're into that kind of thing. And I definitely am. So I'm going to dive back into my Sonny Chiba movies and watch maybe 2 of the Street Fighter movies. Sister Street Fighter. I've only watched Wolf Guy last year, so I won't watch that. And I watched these ones, so I won't watch them. But I did watch the Bodyguard Kiba movies and thoroughly enjoyed them. So thanks a lot to Damien for giving me copies of those movies. Really appreciated it. So that's it for this time around. Thanks a lot for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Let me know if you have seen Sonny Chiba's movies and whether you enjoy them or not. And if you haven't, whether you're going to, because you're in for a good time if you do. You can support the channel by becoming a channel member or by becoming a patron at patreon.com/cherrytalksmovies. I'm saving up my pennies to get a really good camera that I'm going to use for some new projects I've got on the channel. So if you can donate, it would really be appreciated. So next up, we've got the Wednesday video, and I'm going to find something very different to do for the Wednesday video. And then we get back to Science Fiction Saturday, where I'm going to do It Came From Outer Space and This Island Earth as a double feature. So until then, watch some good movies, watch some bad movies. Get some Sonny Chiba movies into you, and I'll catch you next time.